The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Laos. I'm the Senior Vice President, Head of Business Banking Segment here at Bank of America Merchant Services. On behalf of everyone at BAMS, I would like to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Payments as a Catalyst for Global E-Commerce Growth. We take a very practical view on these educational sessions, so our goal here is that the tips and strategies that you'll learn throughout the presentation will be implemented immediately to help you simplify your online payments, operate your online businesses more efficiently and effectively, and continue the global growth momentum in your e-commerce business. You'll have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenter by clicking on that question bubble to the right of your screen there and typing in your question. You'll be able to send your questions in at any time. You don't need to wait for the end of the session to do that. And we'll get to as many of your questions as we can during the Q&A session that will be held right at the end of the presentation today. And we'll try to get provide answers to provide responses to any of the answers that you submit to us, even if we can't get to them before our time is concluded today. If you're having technical difficulties, including difficulty hearing the presenter, problems with the video, you can also use that same chat button there to the right, and we'll do our very best to assist you. We also wanted to let you know that this webinar is being recorded. You'll receive a link to the recording to view it again and to share internally with your colleagues. We certainly encourage you to share this with others. We're joined today by our presenter, Rachel Trueblood, Senior Vice President of Strategic Partner Management at BlueSnap. Rachel has 20 years of experience in both retail and payments, having previously held leadership roles at TSYS and Staples, both in the United States and the EU. Her impressive experience spans such areas as retail, e-commerce, private label credit cards, gift cards, loyalty programs, certainly quite a bit. Today, Rachel works with partners like Bank of America Merchant Services to bring BlueSnap's award-winning global e-commerce solutions to clients such as yourselves. BlueSnap's all-in-one payment platform provides the advanced features businesses need to do business anywhere in the world, from over 100 currencies, alternative payment methods and e-wallets, to invoicing, subscriptions, and even marketplaces. During today's webinar, Rachel will share key findings and implications from their global e-commerce expansion report that they author jointly with the internet retailer. On today's agenda, you'll see that Rachel will cover a few things: an overview of the global e-commerce landscape, strategies for operating on a global scale and simplifying payments, global e-commerce best practices, as well as the Q&A session that I mentioned previously. We're really excited about this session. We thank you for your attendance and your participation. We have a very full program. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Rachel. Rachel, feel free to take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Greg, for the great introduction. I'm excited to join everyone today. Thank you for participating and tuning in for the webinar. As Greg said, I'm Rachel Trueblood, and I lead the partner management team here at BlueSnap. I think we should probably just dive right in. Greg went over the agenda. On the first slide, we see the growth that is happening in international e-commerce. Probably not surprising to most of the folks on the phone here. There's a lot of sort of market intelligence about how this is growing over time. And in fact, if you look at 2024, it's projected to be 5.8 trillion. And this is happening as more and more consumers move their purchases online everywhere across the globe. And if you go to the next slide, one of the big drivers of this growth in e-commerce is the new trend of cross-border online shopping. And cross-border literally means when a shopper purchases from a website or a retailer that is outside their home country. So they're literally shopping across borders. And we are seeing that about 42% of online shoppers report ordering from an international website in the last month. That's a pretty significant amount, and you might think it was localized within one region or one country, but really the stats show that 30, 40, almost 50% of shoppers, depending on where they're located, are shopping across border. And that has a lot of implications for retailers as they're thinking about how to take advantage of this growth opportunity. Let's first start by looking at why people are shopping across borders. Two of the big motivators, and this is probably not surprising to most, are price and product choice, but it varies by where the shoppers are located. You'll see some countries are really motivated by price and finding a better deal outside of what's available in their home country. And some are really looking for product choice, finding those brands that appeal to them and the websites that service those brands. So as businesses are thinking about how do I take advantage of cross-border shopping, understanding sort of where your products are positioned, how your customers shop your products today, and figuring out how to position them for a global audience. If we go to the next slide. From a product perspective, we see fashion being a big draw in many countries, but it isn't a broad brush. Other countries like Italy lead in technology, and based on the products you sell, if you're thinking about how to take advantage of the international market, you might want to think about how you could make it easier for shoppers to purchase your products if they are shopping outside of the US, for example. So in the case of fashion, footwear, clothing, sizes differ depending on whether you're in the US or the UK or another country. And you may want to consider showing sizes in multiple different sort of ways that people shop in other countries. And it helps you get folks to shop your products more readily, but also would limit returns and exchanges for those products if people are buying the things that fit them because they understand it based on your website. Another way that is critical to making it easy for customers to shop on the retailer's website, if you go to the next slide, is making sure that the payment syncs up with what is preferred in that region or country. We're very used to, in the United States, purchasing with Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Apple Pay, Google Pay, but that's not the preferred method of shopping in many countries. And so if you're not offering the payment methods that they are looking to purchase in, you run the risk of missing sales. For example, let's look at the Netherlands here. 57% of all e-commerce in the Netherlands runs through the Dutch direct banking payment method called Ideal. And so if you're selling into the Netherlands and you're not offering Ideal, there's a really good chance you could be missing out on sales. And each of these countries has their own version of a wallet or a banking payment system that they use predominantly. And that's critical to understanding what the payment mix is and how you can offer that for that shopper in that country to help them purchase from you. So since we're in the holiday season, we thought it might be good to show the recent events that have happened over the past month. If you look at the results for the big behemoth of Alibaba Singles Day, which happens on November 11th, they ran through $38 billion worth of sales on that day. It is a massive event and saw increases of 25% year over year. And in the US, we've just had Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And Black Friday used to be primarily a brick and mortar event where people queued up around the corner to get the best deal in store. And then Cyber Monday was born out of e-commerce's desire to have a one-day sales event mirroring Black Friday. But as you can see from the results here, these are e-commerce sales that happened on Black Friday. That they are almost as large as Cyber Monday, and they're both growing by 20%. I might argue that these events aren't distinct or separate anymore. Really, they run together because you'll have almost as many customers shopping from their couch on Black Friday as you do on Cyber Monday. So really, it's more of a cyber weekend or a cyber week, and so I think retailers have had to adapt to those changes by having more online deals available outside of the Cyber Monday holiday. And that's not new. That's been happening for many years, but this is really where you start to see Black Friday catching up to Cyber Monday. Globally, we're seeing other countries and large companies try to emulate these one-day sales events. Think of Amazon Prime Day, or in the UK, they've started doing Black Friday shopping events as well. So as you're thinking about how to take advantage of different markets and different shoppers within those markets, it's good to understand what their cadence of shopping holidays is so that you could tailor the deals or promotions for those particular markets to align with how they are shopping for deals or events, so that you're not missing out on some of these big shopping days.
All right, what do you say? Let's take a pause and do a poll question, Rachel. What do you think? It's always kind of fun to do.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so at this time, let's see, let's do the poll question. And what we have there is, are you currently supporting shoppers outside of your country? Very interested to see what the answer is to this, and then Rachel will give some commentary back once we see what we come back with. So just feel free to select yes or no there. See what we come back with. I don't get the chance to vote, unfortunately. Nor do I have a business, I guess, for that matter. So, all right. Do we have the results up yet? I don't know how instantaneous this is here. Oh, there we go. Very interesting. Rachel, take it away.
Okay, so looks like we have about 60% of those in the webinar who are supporting shoppers outside of the country, and 43 that are not. Okay, let's go to the next slide and see how this compares with what we're seeing for the top 1,000 retailers. So what we see is that more than 50% of US retailers in that top 1,000 are not shipping internationally and are not offering shoppers outside of the home country the ability to purchase on their site. Not too dissimilar from what we saw in the poll here, but it looks like you guys in the poll are a little bit more ahead of the top 1,000. So what this means is that if you're not accepting shoppers internationally and not shipping internationally, you could be missing out on this trend of cross-border shopping. So let's look at who is winning in these areas. Big winners, more than 50%, are coming from really the big three. So you've got Amazon, Alibaba, and eBay. And everyone else is in the remaining sort of less than 50% there. And I think that speaks to both their size and scale and scope, and the fact that they jumped on the cross-border bandwagon very quickly, but also the opportunity to take advantage of cross-border purchasing and expanding through e-commerce internationally. I think we have another poll question potentially.
I think we do. All right. And I love poll questions because it's an opportunity to get feedback from the folks that are attending and really understanding what they're going through in their business. So here's a question. What is your top concern related to international e-commerce? Is it, fraud management, how you're controlling fraud online? Is it offering that preferred local payment method that Rachel mentioned earlier to make sure you're capturing everyone in the countries outside the U.S. that you're trying to bring into your site? Is it fighting chargebacks? That's always the bane of every business's existence, right? Good old chargebacks. You're trying to fight that, trying to find the right payments, fraud solution providers, who provides those solutions, those payment methods. Is it trying to figure all of that out? That could be a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Or is it offering local currency? So select one of those if you don't mind, so that we can kind of see what your top concern is, and then Rachel maybe can pinpoint further comments around that. What's your guess, Rachel? What do you think it's going to be? Curious. I haven't.
It's kind of unfair because I can actually see the polling as it's happening live.
See, I can't. Maybe it's user error. I cannot. I'm going to say it's offering preferred local payment methods. But then again, I'm sort of an e-commerce geek, so that's me talking, not somebody that is perhaps more of a novice to this, or has more things to worry about than just payment methods. So we'll see. Curious to know what this comes back. Let's see. Interesting.
Right.
Fraud management. All right, take it away, Rachel.
Excellent. So this is really interesting, and not too dissimilar from what we see every day and what came out in the study that we did. And in some ways, I would lump together offering local payment methods and finding the right payment provider, because often those go hand in hand. So let's go to the next slide and take a peek at what the research showed. So fraud management, you guys hit it on the head. That is the top issue that retailers are struggling with. And we have the title of this slide being barriers to international e-commerce, and I think I'd rather look at them as challenges that can be overcome. So you've got a couple there that are about fraud and chargebacks. You've got a group of them that are about finding the right payment methods, using the right currencies, and finding a provider that helps you manage both fraud and payments globally. And then sort of on the right side of this chart, some 6 through 10, a lot of them are about reporting, reconciliation, how do you manage the fees associated with it. So we're going to talk through some of the tactics and the ways you could employ solutions against these challenges. So let's look at the 5 keys that address those challenges here. So as we think about how to help our clients globally as they are selling internationally, we look across these 5 dimensions. One is being able to process a transaction locally in the market that the shopper purchases in. So that's really going to help you from a conversion payment acceptance perspective, as well as from a cross-border and FX fee perspective. So we'll go in a little bit deeper on that. The next is the user experience, and making sure that every shopper who shops with you feels like the experience is local to them and customized to their preferences. We'll talk a little bit about optimizing conversion, so how you can get the highest conversion rates, fraud prevention, and what that looks like when you're operating globally versus within a single region. And then reconciliation and reporting, because this is the lifeblood of any good payment solution, is being able to diagnose and understand what's going on and where tweaks need to be made. So let's look at the first one. So local processing, the best practice is to be able to process the payment in the region where the card is issued. So if you have a shopper in, let's say, France, for example, and their card was issued in France, and you're trying to bring that transaction back to the US to be processed, banks get kind of uncomfortable about accepting credit cards from other countries or other regions. And the likelihood of that payment being declined is much higher than if it was processed within Europe. So we see a much higher conversion rate. It can be as high as a 6% improvement in conversion rates for when the payment is processed locally to where the card was issued. This also has an implication for costs as well. So if you're taking a transaction in one currency, settling in another, or bringing a transaction from one country to another country, there are fees that start to add up. So there's a cross-border fee, and then there may be additional foreign exchange fees as well. So by processing payments locally, you eliminate that cross-border fee and reduce the foreign exchange fees as well. So you want to look for a payment solution that helps you process that payment in the local region or local country and has relationships with the banks in those regions. Let's go on to the next slide. So from a user experience perspective, I try to put myself in the seat of a shopper who's trying to shop from an international website. You may be familiar with shopping cart abandonment, where somebody is shopping on your website, they put all their items in the cart, and then they decide they're just not going to move any further, and the items sort of sit there in the cart. And maybe you send them an email saying, hey, you forgot something in your cart, come back and finish the checkout process. That's really shopping cart abandonment. What we look at trying to optimize is checkout abandonment. And that's where you've got all the products in the cart and the shopper hits the checkout now button or pay now button, and they moved into the part of the experience that's all about the payment and entering their payment details. And what we see is that this is where a lot of abandonment can happen if the checkout isn't in the shopper's local language. It doesn't offer the currency they expect to see. And as we talked about before, that the payment method they expect to see is not there. So you have shoppers now abandoning at this critical juncture where you've spent all your time and energy getting them to shop at your website, fill up their cart, and go to checkout. And now they abandon because it doesn't feel local to them. It feels pretty foreign. And so it's really important to offer those local payment methods like we talked about before, to present the price in the local currency. There's sort of that hesitancy on a shopper's behalf that they're worried that I'm going to pay in dollars, but what does that really mean in euro? So you don't want them to have any friction or speed bumps when it comes to putting in their payment details and proceeding on through the transaction. The other thing to look at is, as you're looking to expand internationally, is what does my checkout experience look like? Have I optimized it? Are there extra steps or fields they need to fill out that maybe this is a good time to streamline and relook at the user experience all the way through as you're considering putting in new payment methods, new currencies, etc. So if you get this right, sorry, if you could go back just for a second. If you get this right, you're looking at 10% lift for local currency, and then many more customers not abandoning and really reclaiming those sales. Sorry. The next piece, it goes a little bit hand in hand with the local payment processing, is one of the things that's when you've gotten somebody to purchase, you now have the transaction, you're going to send it off to the acquiring bank and the issuer to process the payment. There are many times where there's only one option for that payment to go to, one bank that they can go to. And what we would recommend is looking for a payment provider that has a network of banks. Because what you really want to do is look at where is the shopper located, who issued their card, what are they buying, where is the bank located, and route the payment to where the highest likelihood of acceptance is. So if you have a network of banks behind your payment provider, you're able to route it to the optimal bank. And then, should anything happen, or should that first bank decide that they're not going to approve it that day, or maybe they've tightened up their fraud rules, what you want to be able to have is an instant failover to another bank. So, for example, what we do here at BlueSnap is we have a network of banks, and we have several behind the scenes, so that if the first bank doesn't approve the transaction, we can instantly fail over to another. That's a really good way to, what I would call, save the sale and get an approval on that transaction. The other two pieces of that equation is if there are subscriptions within the card brand rules, you can retry that transaction so that if it doesn't work the first time, you can try it again. And then the last piece is very common today for retailers' websites to allow a cardholder or a shopper to save their card on file so that the next time they come through, you could offer them a almost one-click checkout experience. They don't have to re-enter all their details. Well, from just purely a US perspective, more than 5 million credit cards are reissued every month. So if you've got shoppers that have their card on file on your website, chances are some of them have been refreshed, and maybe you don't have the latest credit card information. So we would advise looking for an account updater product within your payment solution. Our account updater syncs up to Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. So before a transaction happens, we go out and check and see, have there been any updates to that card? And if there have been updates to that card, we use the new updated version to process the sale. So that's really critical as you have more and more shoppers saving their account details, or even if you have subscriptions, somebody might have their card registered for a subscription, you want to be sure that goes through. Okay, so this was top of mind for a lot of folks, is really managing fraud globally. So fraud is not a one-size-fits-all solution. What works in the US doesn't mean that it's going to work in another country. What we see is that some of the things that we think about from a US or a domestic perspective may actually not be fraud in another country. So I've got two examples here. In the US, a new device that makes many transactions with many different cards and many different payment methods would likely trip a US fraud rule. But in less developed countries, it's much more the norm that people would be using an internet cafe and have multiple different people shopping from one computer. So you need a fraud engine that really can understand the local ways that people shop and what the methods and behaviors are within those areas, and can adapt for you and learn through both automated and non-automated machine learning what is the norm for that country. You also want to be able to tweak the fraud rules globally based on your business. So this is really important, that because one size does not fit all, you really need to look at what you're selling, what markets you're shopping in, how your shoppers are behaving, and tweak the fraud rules and the settings to optimize for your specific business. And some solution providers have the ability to do that and allow you to tweak those rules. Some payment providers actually have a fraud engine built into their product, and in most cases, they control the rules. So if you're letting somebody else control all your rules, you may not be optimized for your product in your markets and your shoppers. So I would weigh those two options out, whether you want to have the ability to fully customize it, or whether you might be a little bit limited by having somebody else control your rules. I think the last slide, oh, no, there's another one. So when we talked about the 5 sort of keys to getting cross-border commerce right, the last one was all about reporting and reconciliation. We look at 4 main avenues, and of course, you know, the transaction reporting, settlement reporting, that's sort of a given, but these 4 are the ones that I think of as I'm considering cross-border commerce. How can I optimize cross-border? So we look at the checkout, the payment, the fraud, and the chargebacks. So being able to understand from, in the checkout chevron here, what is our checkout conversion rate? How successful are we in getting people to press the checkout button after they've hit the payment screen? How is that converting by channel? So is it converting better on mobile versus desktop, by device for maybe Androids or iOS, by location? You can look at it sort of many different ways, but that helps you really target, well, maybe we're offering the wrong payment types in this area, or maybe we've made it a little bit difficult for shoppers to make it through the checkout process. The next chevron is payment conversion. And this is about now that the shopper has hit the buy button, they've entered all their details, and now the payment's going out to be processed. How is it converting? What is the authorization rate? And how does that vary by payment type, by country, by transaction value, and even by issuer? So to understand how does that matrix of variables help you tweak and optimize your payment conversion? You know, every 1% that you can get on payment acceptance is meaningful to a business. So really having this level of detail for both the checkout conversion and the payment conversion is critical to optimizing your international payment strategy. Then on the fraud perspective, and I'll put chargebacks in there too, is being able to look at them by country, transaction value, product category, so that you understand where is the fraud coming from, where do I need to tweak my rules, how maybe can I get ahead of the chargebacks that are coming in through alerts from somebody like an Ethica or a Verify. How can I sort of run that balance between stopping truly fraudulent transactions but not increasing your false positive rate so that you're stopping good sales from coming through because of sort of maybe a nervousness to let them through. You want to be sure your fraud rules help you balance those two. And then on the chargeback side, having a solution that helps you mitigate friendly fraud. So friendly fraud is when a shopper goes to their issuing bank and disputes a charge or sort of has a complaint and doesn't come to the retailer first to resolve it. And so really that is something that payment providers can help mitigate for you so that you're not incurring that chargeback when it gets through that friendly fraud process. And then the last piece, and this probably makes every finance person's head explode, is having multiple payment processors. So finance is trying to reconcile every month, and what we found in our study is that 62% of retailers use 2 or more gateways or international payment processors. And that's really challenging for a finance team to sort of take all of that data, streamline it, work their way through it, and complete their reconciliation process. And why does this happen? So it happens for a bunch of reasons. The top two is maybe the retailer started in one channel, so maybe they were only phone orders. So they were a catalog company taking phone orders, and so they had one payment provider for doing phone orders, and then they decided to do e-commerce, so they added another one, and maybe then they decided to become a marketplace or take subscriptions, and they added another gateway and another gateway. And many of you who are considering going international, you may find that, all right, I have what my payment stack is in the US, but now I'm going to go to the UK, I'm going to go to Australia, I'm going to add a payment provider in the UK, and I'm going to add a payment provider in Australia. And suddenly you have a very complicated payment tech stack that is both difficult for the finance team, but also very difficult for your tech and developer team. You think about from a tech development perspective, they're having to maintain all of these different gateways. If they want to add a new payment type like Apple Pay, they have to go and add that to all of the different gateways. And so I think that having multiple payment processors or multiple gateways is a headache sort of across the organization. And fortunately now there are providers, and BlueSnap is one of them, where you really can consolidate all of these payment providers and all of the payment gateways under one account with one integration. We have a client that we've been working with, and as soon as they implemented our system, they went from many gateways to one gateway. Their reconciliation went from days to minutes. So it's a really big time saver for the finance team and the developer team. So this is one that I'm pretty passionate about because I think it's an easy fix and it can really help make a difference to the business. So I think we're at the takeaway point. So 4 key takeaways. 1, global e-commerce is really underpenetrated by most retailers. I think we saw through our poll here that you're pretty reflective of the market and the study that we did. Really less than, or about 50% were operating cross-border. 2, payment and fraud strategies really need to be customized to adapt to this cross-border world, offering the right payment types, offering the right currencies, making sure that the payments are being processed in a way locally that improve and optimize the payment acceptance and reduce costs. 3, we just talked about having that consolidated view of the payment and fraud metrics, because what you're really trying to do is optimize your conversions and really increase your sales, reduce your costs, reduce your risk, and having that reporting view where you can look across those 4 chevrons, super important to making sure that you can optimize your sales. And then, new technologies are available. We see retailers all the time that are using technologies that came to market 25 years ago and are trying to address the demands of a global modern shopper with technology that's 25 years old, and trying to sort of align both of those is really tough. But there's new technologies available to do things like consolidate multiple gateways, make sure that the checkout experience is modern and optimized, get the right payment methods in front of the customer, and route the payments to where they're going to have the highest degree of success. So I think that's it for the for the presentation here.
It is, yeah. Thanks,
Awesome.
Rachel. I think we'll take some questions, but before we do, I want to say thank you to you before I forget. Certainly don't want to do that. I think this was some excellent information sharing around global e-commerce growth and how it will continue to impact businesses of all sizes, right? E-commerce is not just for larger businesses anymore. Businesses of all sizes can take advantage and frankly need to take advantage of some of these solutions. So let's open it now up for questions. And to remind everyone who's on the line, if you do have questions, please click that question bubble to the right of your screen and simply type in your question. We have a few, I think, that have already come in through the presentation. So I see our first one there. Let's take a look. My company has limited development resources. How long does it usually take to implement a global e-commerce solution? Rachel, what do you think?
Really good question, and we see this all the time. It feels very daunting when you're thinking about implementing a global solution. There's a couple ways to think about this. So one of them is sort of a DIY, a do-it-yourself way, where the retailer is really doing all of the payment integration work and integrating all the payment tools themselves. That works really well when you've got lots of development resources. What we would recommend in this situation is more of an all-in-one solution, and where all of the global capabilities are pre-integrated into the solution. So there's sort of one API, and the retailer gets one account that they can access globally. So an all-in-one solution seems to fit here, and that's really the core of what we do here at BlueSnap. And we see retailers can go as fast as they want. A lot of people laugh and are like, no, that's, what is the time frame? So we've had retailers go live in a week. But generally, we see clients get up and running within 30 to 60 days. But truly, it's based on the speed of the retailer wants to move and the skill of the developers. All of our APIs are on our website at bluesnap.com. The sandbox is open to anyone. So I think that might give you a feel for how easy or how difficult it might be in your particular situation. But I would say, within 30 to 60 days, you should be live and running.
That's fantastic. That's great. All right, so let's see, question 2, and here we go. It's around fraud solutions. Again, earlier I had said I thought the most important pressing issue for everyone on the phone is going to be alternative payment methods, right? Boletos, Kabini, no, it's fraud solutions. So I stand corrected. So question 2 is, how do you evaluate different fraud solutions for international commerce? Another good question.
Yeah, very good. And this is top of mind for a lot of our clients. I would say that what you want to do is make sure that the fraud provider has deep expertise on a global scale and can actually take the learning and the AI that they've built into their product and tailor that to each market that you're going to do business in. We recommend that retailers really look for ways that they can customize the solution based on where their customers are located, the products they sell, and how their customers shop. Many times where we see clients get tripped up is when they've come from a solution where the rules were not able to be customized on a global scale. That maybe the payment provider that they had been using really monitored and sort of locked down all the rules. What you need is the ability to tailor the rules to your particular situation and have the flexibility of working with that payment provider or that fraud provider to get their expertise in helping you craft the rules. The other thing is to look for some unique things that that fraud providers have in their arsenal. So one of the ones that we use and we recommend is device fingerprinting. So this is actually very cool. It is what we're able to do is look at the device that's making the purchase and then look across the network of just a vast network of data and say, has this device been used before at other retailers in other countries to commit fraudulent activity? So we can identify that and then stop it before it creates an incident for the retailer. So I think features and functionality like that give you the leg up is what you want to be looking for in a fraud solution.
That's amazing. So device fingerprinting, that's I didn't realize you guys provided that to clients. That's impressive. That's impressive. Hey, just if we could for a moment, we have some to go back to question one, right? I think perception sometimes in life and in business, Rachel, can be reality, right? And I think what I hear often from clients is, this perception that, a full, robust cross-border e-commerce solution, that's for bigger companies that have all of these developers. But I think from what I'm hearing you say here in answering question one is that your APIs are specifically focused on that small to medium-sized business that doesn't have a whole slew of developers at their disposal. And in fact, I think what you're saying is they're very easy to use, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. So we, when we were developing our product, what we saw was a bit of a gap in the market. There was this DIY solution where the retailer really had to dedicate a significant chunk of their development resources to getting a payment solution up and running. And we felt like that may be great for the really, really large companies, billions and billions of dollars that have those developer resources. But once you start to move down from that segment, there weren't a lot of options to have an easy way for somebody to integrate payments on a global scale. And so the product that we have has everything built in from currencies to payment types to fraud management solutions, chargeback solutions, all the reporting, all the compliance tools, which we really didn't talk about here, to make sure that folks are in compliance with 3D Secure, GDPR, PCI, and really wrap that up in one all-in-one solution so that there's one API, one integration, one underwriting, one account, no matter where businesses do business. And that caters to folks that don't have that team or that army of development resources. So you're absolutely right.
Yep. And I think that's what you guys have done quite well. So kudos to you. So let's see, I think we have time for another question. Let's see what we have here. How do you decide which payment methods here's a payment method question, right? Somebody must have been listening to me. Here, how do you decide which payment methods to offer in which country?
That's a good one. So there's a couple different routes to take here. One is talk to your payment provider. They should be able to advise you on which payment methods to offer in which country. There's a lot of research out there. So if you're considering a certain market, I would do some research. There's plenty of papers and articles about which payment methods are important in which areas. But the most important thing, because every retailer is different, every shopper is different, is to test. So it's pretty easy to test your checkout flow, to develop an A/B test, and try offering, this number of payment methods in this order versus more, less, different ones, and really follow the data to understand which payment methods work for those markets. And maybe you start with the markets that are most important to you, the largest markets, and then use that learning to tweak in the other markets. But I would say the three things are: talk to your payment provider. They should be able to advise you on which payment methods are important in which region. Do a little research. There's a lot of information out there on what payment methods are important, and then test.
Hmm. That's great. And I'd add as well, leading up a team of business consultants that are very focused on helping businesses to expand via e-commerce, helping businesses like the folks that are on the phone today, understanding where their consumers are coming from, who's buying from your website, where are they coming from? To Rachel's point, what markets are they coming from? Often we will hear clients say, well, I want to accept this payment method. And what we often do is ask why. Is it because some other company said you should, or is it because it's satisfying a need and adding value to your business? So I think, what's important is that you understand your consumers, and a lot of that is driven by the products that you're selling online. And once you understand that, which many of you, if not all of you, do know that, then I think it's easy to back into which markets we need to serve and which payment methods, to Rachel's point, serve those markets. And I think many of you would be quite surprised to see what an uplift you'll get by accepting those local payment methods. I think here in the United States, we get very enamored with the type of payment methods we use. And we kind of, again, perception can be reality, right? I suffer from that too. And I think sometimes we think how we accept payments, how we use payments in the United States is true around the globe. Not the case at all. A lot of local forms of payment, as Rachel mentioned earlier, are actually the dominant method in those particular markets. So working with your business consultant to really understand your business and understand which markets you need to be in, I think is very important. Okay, I think we're coming up to the end of our time, if I'm not mistaken. So Rachel, I want to say thank you again. I think this was incredibly informative. I'm not surprised. You always bring a ton of information and expertise. So thank you. I want to thank everyone who attended the webinar today, all of our guests. And just want to mention that, if you have any questions about any of the topics we discussed today, any of the content we presented, anything at all, you certainly, or how Bank of America Merchant Services, quite frankly, can help you grow your e-commerce business, feel free to contact your local business consultant, or of course, you can reach us online. That's very easy to do. We're passionate about, in our partnership with BlueSnap, we're very passionate about e-commerce. Global e-commerce, opens up the world to your online business, and we're just super excited about helping you with that. So best of luck with that. Want to thank you again for joining us. Have a great rest of the day and a wonderful holiday season. Thanks.